Chelsea Community Church's program on Medicare and Medicaid. I am thrilled to introduce Britt Burner. It's hard to know what to say. She's so wonderful. But anyway, you all, if you missed the seminar on Estate Planning 101, that is now on our website, so you can access that easily. And then you'll really love her, because that was a wonderful seminar. So please join me in welcoming Britt Burner.
Okay. I love the microphone here because I feel like I'm a pop star. But I won't sing, I swear. Okay, so we're going to talk about Medicare and Medicaid. First, I'm just going to tell you a few things about me. I think you saw my bio, so I won't go too much into it, but why you should care what I have to say is a little important. I'm one of the partners of Burner Prudenti Law. It's a law firm that was started by my mom almost 30 years ago. Now there's 3 partners. We are a women-owned business. We have 11 lawyers. We have 4 offices, and I run our Manhattan office. Our other offices are on Long Island. In addition to being estate planning attorneys, and we help people with wills and trusts, like I spoke about last time I was here, and we help people after someone's death with being an executor or trustee, handling the estate, we also practice elder law. And elder law is really just the law that relates to as people get older and the things that they need. So sure, estate planning is part of that, right? Making sure you have the right power of attorney and other documents in place. It can involve a guardianship in court if somebody loses their mental capacity, but it also includes the use of government benefits to cover the costs of long-term care. And that's a lot of what we're going to be talking about today. So some people have enough money to pay for their own care, be it home care or nursing home care. Some people have long-term care insurance that they purchased or was a benefit through their employment at some point. And then other people are looking to access services through the Medicaid program. Some people do a little bit of all 3, right? So part of our job as elder law attorneys is to look at what is available and what are these rules that we have to abide by, and how do we get people the services that they need. Now, we're very lucky that we live here in New York City, where there's a lot of care givers available. There's a lot of home health aides. There's a lot of services available. Unfortunately, when I'm out in my offices out on the east end of Long Island, there's a lot of people out there who might qualify. When I tell you these dollar amounts and these rules, they qualify for the care, but they can't access it, right? There's no caregivers available. There's no, the home health aides can't drive to their house, and there's no public transportation. So we're very lucky here in New York City. It's probably, when they're talking up in Albany every year about the budget and Medicaid and who's getting the services, we're getting a lot of them here in New York City because of the availability of the program. So we're very lucky. I have some notes because the Medicare stuff is not the stuff I talk about every day. So I'm going to hold these while I talk about Medicare. When I shift to Medicaid, then it'll be a free-for-all. I'm happy to take questions, but let's take them at the end because I might answer them along the way. So Medicare is health insurance, right? A lot of you have Medicare. First and foremost, it's for individuals over the age of 65. It's usually their primary insurance. Medicare can also, recipients of Medicare are also individuals who've been on Social Security disability with a 2-year waiting period after you qualify. So there are some people under 65 who are also on Medicare. A lot of what I'm going to talk about today is going to be focusing on that over 65 population. When I get into Medicaid and qualifying for Medicaid, we're going to be talking about people that I will refer to as dual eligibles, meaning they're eligible for both programs, Medicare and Medicaid. Medicare has, you've probably heard the letters, right? A, B, C, D. Those are the letters generally. So a lot of people have what we call traditional Medicare. So that's Parts A, Part B, and then they have Part D which is drug, and they might also have a supplement. And I'm going to go through what each of those cover. That's the Medicare where for a lot of people it's $174.70 this year, comes out of your Social Security check, and that is going to pay for your Part B. Part A has no premium. So as long as people have worked and paid in their quarters, generally people will have Part A. You have to sign up for B. And then D, you also have to sign up for. And there's a lot of people who make the mistake of not signing up for Part D, which is a drug prescription plan. And the problem is that if a lot of people say, well, I don't take anything, I don't need it. But there are large penalties when you later have to sign up for it. So it's important to have a Part D coverage once you go on Medicare, even if you have the lowest level coverage possible, because you don't want to end up with those penalties. So Part A is covering hospitalization. So and hospice care, so end-of-life care, less than 6 months to live. That's what Part A is covering. Part B is what's really important, right? Part B is doctors, physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, medical equipment and supplies, home health aid, but very limited, right? Not the long-term care we need, but I'll talk about what it does cover. Preventative care. So that's the bulk of your services as your health insurance is the Part B. You have to enroll in it, like I said, and you can start enrolling starting 3 months before your 65th birthday. Part D, as I said, is the prescription plan, and you have to enroll in it. Just remember, you have to enroll in a D. Now, I skipped over C, right? I said A, B, and D. So Part C, if you have a Part C, you don't usually have the A, B, D. So traditional is having the A, the B, and signing up for a D. C is what we have, which are Medicare Advantage plans. So you can think of it, for some people it's an HMO, it could be a PPO also, but Medicare Advantage plans are ones that have a more limited network of services. A lot of people choose to go on Medicare Advantage because the monthly premiums are less than for the others. Now, I actually did a consultation with a gentleman today for his parent, and his parent is in a rehab facility. She was in the hospital, and I'm going to go through the details of how all that works with coverage, but she's in the rehab facility, and what he's now realizing is that the Medicare coverage under her Advantage plan is not as good as it would be if she had the traditional A, B, D, and a supplement, which I'm going to talk about in a second. And so he's actually in the process of switching her over. So it's important on the annual enrollment that you look at maybe where your health is, what might be coming up in the future, and make sure your plan is still right for you. A lot of people at 65 will sign up for a Medicare Advantage plan because they figure, I'm relatively healthy, I don't need to spend a lot of money on health insurance, I'm not so concerned, I don't have a lot of medications, and so they'll sign up for an Advantage plan. But 5, 10, 15 years later, you might have larger costs that you might anticipate, and therefore it might be worth it for you to pay that higher premium, if you can afford it, to pay that higher premium to make sure that your other services will be covered. But I want to point out again that Advantage plan has a network of providers. So you might be a little more limited in terms of who you can see in terms of all those services that I went through, all the different therapy services, doctors, et cetera, because they have to be in network with your Advantage plan. Okay, so people who are on traditional will often get a supplement. You might have heard the term a Medigap. A Medigap is a supplemental plan that helps pay for a lot of the copays that are associated with those Part B and with those Part B services that I was talking about. So it covers hospital coinsurance coverage. It covers the copays, including rehabilitation facility copays. And again, I'm going to go through kind of the life of a fall, right? What happens when someone falls or has an acute problem and where your insurance is taking you through. It covers hospice coinsurance for drugs and respite care. Respite care is if you're receiving hospice care and say you have an at-home caregiver who needs to go away for a week. Respite care could be that you go into a hospice facility for that week and then you can return home to give them respite and to give you respite. And these plans have letters. So we're back to the letters again. They're A through N. A lot of people used to have the Plan F, and the Plan F was the one that we wanted most people to have. We made sure it covered those rehab copays, but you can't buy a Plan F anymore. You have to buy a G instead. The G is the replacement for the F, and it, I believe the only difference is there's a higher deductible, but it's basically the same type of plan. And A is the least expensive and it covers the least, and N is the most expensive and it would cover the most. Okay, so now we take a fall. We're on our last page of this Medicare stuff. So someone takes a fall or they have some sort of acute event that puts them into the hospital, right? You must be admitted to the hospital for what we call 2 midnights. It's the 2 midnight rule in order to get the Medicare rehabilitation benefits. So some people don't realize it, but they go to the emergency room and they're sitting, it could be a private room in the emergency room, who knows, here in the city you could be sitting in the hallway and who knows what your status is. But you might not be admitted. You might be on what they call observation status. That is really what we're talking about. You're probably receiving the same care regardless, but we're talking about insurance coverage here, right? So observation status is not being admitted to the hospital. So if you're in there, even if you're on observation status for 3 days and they're trying to figure out what's wrong with you, you will not be released to a rehab facility with that Medicare rehab benefit. So you want to make sure that if you are in a facility, you're being cognizant in a hospital of what your insurance status is according to the facility. So once you're admitted and you have your 2 midnight stays, then when it's time to leave the hospital, you have rehab benefits under that Medicare service. So this is still just regular Medicare, right? So say someone goes to a rehab facility. Where are we? We're on 20th and 9th. So we got Village Care a little bit downtown. We've got Amsterdam House, Riverside. On the east side, we've got Upper East Side Rehab, Mary Manning Walsh. These are all rehab facilities that are also nursing homes, but for Medicare purposes, they provide these rehabilitation services. Days 1 through 20 are going to be 100% covered under your Medicare. Days 21 through 100 have a copay of $204 a day. Any facility across the whole country, it's $204 a day. It's a standard copay for rehab services under Medicare. $204 per day, right? So this is where you want that Plan G, the Plan N, you want that supplement. Why? Because that supplement is paying for that $204 a day. So you can be in that facility beyond the 20th day and have full coverage. Every Medicare Advantage plan has a different level of services. Again, how much you pay depends on what you get. So for example, the person I was speaking with today, they said, well, after day 20, the Medicare Advantage plan is not covering the copay days. So now that is an out-of-pocket expense, so that's a problem. So you would want to have that better coverage to make sure that those copay days are covered. And all of a sudden, like I said, if you're 65 and you're relatively healthy, the odds that you're going to end up with a long-term stay in a rehab facility are probably low. But as you get older, paying, let's say, $300 a month for a supplemental plan feels cheap when you think about the fact that you could end up with a $204 a day copay if you have to have a rehab benefit. So that's why we reevaluate needs every year. The 100 days. So for the 100 days, you get up to 100 days. But if they say at the facility, you're not benefiting from this rehabilitation, you're either not participating, or they don't think you would get any worse if you went home, or you didn't have these services, they can cut you off. And they can say, when we eventually get audited from Medicare, they're not going to pay us for this because you weren't showing any improvement. You were not showing that you would get worse if you were here. And so we're going to cut you off at day 22, 42, whatever it might be, anywhere up to that 100. And then I'll talk about the decision that has to be made. But it's important to note that they used to say you plateaued. Right, that if anyone's been a caregiver, help someone out, they say, you plateaued, we're not gonna cover your care anymore. And there was a bunch of federal lawsuits that actually proved that that's not right. That's not the rule, right? You can plateau, that's fine. The question is, if you stop getting the rehab, are you gonna get worse? That's the question. Sometimes a plateau is great, right? Sometimes we're thrilled for a plateau. We just don't want you to get worse. So you could get up to those 100 days. They have to give you 2 days notice if they're cutting off those Medicare days. And if they do, the notice actually has the ability to appeal. You can appeal and get an expedited decision. And actually the person I spoke with today is on the second level of the appeal because he lost the first appeal. So now he's appealing the appeal. And with the hope of getting some more Medicare coverage before we have to move on to the next type of payer. If you're in that facility and you go home on day 100, so you've used your whole 100 days and then you go home and you fall again and you're readmitted and you have to go back, if you're home for less than 60 days, you have no Medicare coverage when you get back to that facility because you need to be home for 60 days to get a new set of 100 days. They call it a spell of illness. So family members are often saying to me, they want to send my mom home, it's day 85, I'm so nervous. And I say, well, listen, sure, I understand that you would like her to have more benefit now, but it kind of makes me feel comfortable to know we have a 15-day grace period that if she gets readmitted, I know she has 15 days of coverage where she could get a little more rehab if she does go back in. So you're really looking, that's looking on the bright side, right? I don't know what the answer is because I'm not a medical person, I'm a legal person, but I know people want insurance coverage when they need it. But let's say you do go home and 61 days you're home, and on day 61 or 62, you have to get readmitted, you have a whole new 100 days again. It has nothing to do with the calendar year. The calendar year is irrelevant in this circumstance. Yep, so if you're home for 60 days or more, you get what's called a new spell of illness. So if you're readmitted after that point, you start back at day 1 of 100. And okay, so now I can put this down because now we're at the now what. Okay, so let's say, I won't even talk about them cutting you off early. Let's say you're at day 100, okay? So now you've been there 100 days and they say you're being discharged. Most people think that means they're taking you, they're putting you in a cab and they're telling the cab where to take you and they're sending you home. What it really means is you don't have a payer source anymore, right? It means Medicare's not paying for you to be here anymore. So you can leave, you can apply for Medicaid if you're financially eligible, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, or you can pay privately. This facility that this gentleman was talking to me about today is in Brooklyn. It's $475 a day privately. The ones here in Manhattan are usually closer to $600 a day. Could be more. So that is not the facility, but I know that. That's in Cobble Hill, right? Yeah, that's probably awesome. They're all pretty similar. So you're just to quantify that, because it's a big number, $475 a day in a month is probably about $14,500. So even people who have, I mean, I guess some people have a lot of money. People who have a modest amount of money at $14,500 a month, that's not very sustainable. So that's where we start to talk about other things to do. But those are your three options. So they say Medicare's cutting off, and that's what you can do. You can go home, you can stay and apply for Medicaid, or you can pay privately. Those are your three options. Let's talk about going home first. So you can go home, and maybe you don't need any help at home, or you have family at home who's helping you and friends, and that's fine. You don't need care. That's obviously the cheapest thing to do. You could go home and pay privately for home care. I should point out actually here, if you go home at this point, Medicare, remember I said Medicare Part B covers home care services? This is when they cover it, right? If you need to re-enter into the community from a facility setting, you can get authorized for home care hours. But the most Medicare is going to pay, the max, is going to be 4 hours a day, 5 days a week for about a month. So you're talking really not an enormous amount of care. Now, for some people, that's perfect, right? It's like somebody to kind of help me. I'm a little nervous to bathe on my own or bathe without someone in the house because I might fall and I'm not steady on my feet yet. That might be fine, but for some people, they need much more than that to go home. That's where we start to look at these other things, but Medicare will cover that at home. They'll also cover physical therapy, occupational therapy in your home. Sure. About Medicare paying for the home care? Oh, sure. So Medicare will pay, if you're re-entering the community, up to 4 hours a day from a facility. So like if you were in rehab at one of these places and then they tell you you're at discharge, I said you could either go home, pay privately, or go on Medicaid. If you go home, right when you go home, you can get up to 4 hours a day for up to 5 days a week for up to 4 weeks. So for about a month, for 5 days a week, you could get 4 hours of care. So it's just enough to kind of give you a little boost to get you reacclimated to being in your home and outside of a facility setting, but it's not going to be any kind of long-term or full day care. So that's if you go home with Medicare. Now, I said you could pay privately. There's all sorts of home care agencies throughout the city that you could pay anywhere from probably around $22 an hour to, you could probably pay up to $50 an hour if you really wanted to, but for home care services. So that is if you're privately paying for the care. And I was also saying that Medicare is going to pay for those other services at home. So for a physical therapist to come see you, for an occupational therapist to come see you, whatever those Medicare services are, they can provide them for that short period of time in your home. So say you don't have the money to pay for the care, right? You need 12 hours a day of care, and it's just too much for you to pay out of pocket. You don't have the money for it. You can't support it. You can apply for what's called community Medicaid. This is where I need my cheat sheet again. I don't have the numbers memorized yet. I memorized the numbers once we hit about October. I have them in my head for 2 months, and they change again at the beginning of the year. So if you're on community Medicaid, that is Medicaid for people living in the community, meaning living outside of a nursing home, rehab, hospital setting. So for some people, they're living in an assisted living. For some people, they're in their own apartment. Yeah. For at home, it depends on the service that you're receiving. So they pay for specific services. They don't pay for everything. Or they pay for a lot of things that have co-pays. So if you're going on Medicaid to pay for home care, now we're in a world where it's not automatically that you receive it like when you got Medicare and you turn 65. This now we're talking about needing to qualify with assets and income. So we have to talk about what those numbers are. Community Medicaid care in the home is going to pay for home health aid services. About how many services or how many hours of services they will cover will depend on a nursing assessment, where they will send a nurse in to determine what care you are going to get based on what they think you need. It will also pay for certain adult daycare programs. So you might have a few hours of home care in the morning and then certain day programs that you can go to, which are very beneficial to some people. Some people aren't joiners and they don't really want to go to those programs, but for some people it's really great socialization, and Medicaid also will pay for the transportation there. So it's very helpful for some people who want to get out, want to get that socialization, but can't do it on their own. So asset-wise, you're allowed to have $31,175 in assets. So what does assets mean, right? So if I have a checking savings account, if I have a whole life insurance policy that has a cash value, if I have savings bonds for Medicaid, yep. If I have savings bonds, if I have investment accounts, these are all assets, and that in total, those have to be less than the $31,175. Real estate, if it's different if it's your primary residence or if it's a secondary. So I know some people here in the city might rent here in the city, but they have a cabin outside the city or something. That cabin outside the city, if this is your primary residence, that will count. Whereas if you're living in your apartment here in the city and you own it, it is exempt because you're living in it, as long as it's, well, there's a lot of rules of exemption, but basically if you're a single person and it's worth less than $1 million, then it's exempt. Sorry. The question was what about real estate that I just answered. If you have a family member that lives with you, it depends it depends on who the family member is. If your spouse is living with you, the home is exempt because your spouse is living in it. Only minor, the question was what about children? Only minor children are an exemption for that purpose. But if it's less than $1 million, it's exempt. No, not income. I didn't talk about income yet. Your assets, when I add up those different accounts that I'm talking about, they have to be less than $31,175. Importantly, what's not counted in that are retirement accounts. If you have an IRA, a 401k, a 403b, a TDA, from the teacher's retirement system, those tax-deferred retirement accounts are not counted as an asset for Medicaid purposes. So as an example, if I have a checking account with $30,000 in it and my only other asset is a $300,000 retirement account, I qualify for Medicaid because my assets that are countable are underneath that limit because my retirement account doesn't count as an asset. Then I'm going to talk about income now. So I have to get my assets under that level. I'm going to add something before I talk about income, actually. So also I want to point out that for home care Medicaid, the current rule in New York State, the current rule that's being applied is that there's no what we call look back. So what that means is we're standing here, I think it's April 25th, if I'm not mistaken, and if at the end of the day, 5 days from now, on April 30th, my assets are underneath that limit, I can apply starting on May 1st. So it goes by the month. If I'm not eligible when the day opens on the first of the month, then I'm not eligible again till the following month. But there is no look back. So I could give all my money away today, and next week, when it's May 1st, I could apply for Medicaid for home care purposes only, home care. I'm gonna talk about the nursing home in a second. So that is very important. There has been legislation that was passed in 2020 that would put a look back on that home care, meaning that if you transferred assets for 2.5 years before needing that home care, you could be penalized and not receive Medicaid for a period of time, but that is not currently the law, and we don't really know if or when that will ever go into actual effect. But there is currently no look back. I keep saying it because it's the most common thing that people are confused about, because it's very different from the nursing home setting. And because that law was passed in 2020, anyone who's done any online research themselves has probably seen it pop up with effective dates that, if you pay attention, were really quarterly, and it never actually happened. It keeps getting pushed by the Department of Health. So we have no look back. We can have Medicaid if we have less than $31,175 in our bank account. Now, what about income, right? Because we have Social Security, we have pensions, we have required minimum distributions from those retirement accounts that we're not counting. We have alimony, yep, that's another piece of income that comes in. There's any income that's coming in monthly. I have people who have royalties, or because of books they've written or other art that they've created where there's money coming in. Some people are on Medicaid and they have salaries coming in still. They have wages. These are all pieces of income, right? So the income rule is $1,752 per month. Not very high, right? But don't worry, it's going to get better. This story has a good ending. $1,752 per month is the amount of income that Medicaid says you're allowed to have, right? So for a lot of people, their Social Security alone might be more than that if they worked for a long time. Then you add in these other things that we just listed, and their income could be $2,000, $3,000, maybe $4,000, maybe more $1,000 per month. So what happens to those people? What we do is we say, okay, let's say your income is, I want to make my math easy. Let's say your income is $3,752 per month, right? So you're $2,000 over Medicaid's limit. We take that $2,000 every month and we put it into what's called a pooled income trust, P-O-O-L-E-D, pooled income trust. This is a type of supplemental needs trust that is meant for people who are on government benefits to hold their money, to let them use that money, but keep those benefits. So your $2,000 a month, it would, say you use, the bank around the corner, everything gets direct deposited. Then once it's deposited, the $2,000 per month will go to the trust, and you'll submit bills to that trust, and it will pay your bills. It could be your rent, your maintenance, your mortgage, your food, your clothing, anything for your personal benefit, nothing to benefit anyone else. It can't give you cash, and it can't give you firearms, tobacco, or alcohol. It's the rule. Food it can pay for, yep. Even if you get food stamps, because food stamps is a government benefit, so it can also pay for food, yes. Yep. Do you have a pooled trust? You just probably have a supplemental needs trust. Right. So this pooled trust is a different type of trust than a regular supplemental needs trust. It's a trust that's specifically run by various charities, have pooled trusts that they run. They're all charities within the state that are for the benefit of disabled persons, and they run these trusts. And these are specifically for people over the age of 65 who are on government benefits, who don't have a freestanding, their own supplemental needs trust, which is different. The question was, what if you have debt? Your pooled trust cannot pay debt. So let's say you have a credit card with a $300 balance, and then this month you rack up another $100 of charges. It can pay the $100, but it won't pay your $300 of debt. But you have $1,752 that you're keeping in your name every month, and you could pay your debt down with that money. But you cannot use the pooled trust to pay debt. Yes, good question. The pooled trust upon your death goes to the charity that runs the trust. So the deal with Medicaid is this: we'll pay for your home care services, we'll pay what you need, you can have the use of your income for your lifetime, it will accumulate month to month, but if it has accumulated to any amount and you die, you cannot pass that money on to someone else. So, most people who are going on Medicaid are living on their income anyway. So I can't really think of very many people that I know of who had huge amounts in their pool trust when they died, because think about it. You've got $30,000 in your name and you have your income coming in. Most people who are over 65 receiving Medicaid home care services are spending their income every month. But yeah, you cannot accumulate it and pass it on. But you can use it in your lifetime, and we help people use it. And the trusts who run it also help people figure out how to use it. Like, for example, I had someone who had a high income, and so we said, well, first of all, it's amazing. I go into people's houses and I can barely get up off their couch. It's like this far down on the ground, and they're like, what am I ever going to spend this money on? I'm like, well, you could get a new couch, So there are things that people really deprive themselves of because I think they're so nervous about money. And so it makes you really think, well, I better spend it because it's going to go otherwise. But also things like someone has a few extra $100 per month to spend. We pre-planned a funeral, and then they made monthly payments from the pool trust towards it. So at the time of their death, it was paid off and the funeral was paid for. So there's things that you can do to pay, but it just is anything for your benefit. And I had someone who said to me, well, what if I want to go to Michigan to visit my daughter? Well, the pool trust could buy your plane ticket. I've had situations where somebody got 8 hours a day approved from Medicaid, but they really wanted 12 hours of care. Well, the pool trust paid for the extra 4 hours that the Medicaid services weren't paying for. So there are ways that it can be used. There was a question here. Can you go to Europe for vacation on the pooled trust? There's nothing that says you can't. You just can't pay for a companion. You have to go alone. You can use the funds in the pool trust for anything, for what you need. Right. The question was, is there an age limit? So there's not an age limit. You just, for example, I've had younger people who are on means-tested government benefits, and we've put assets in a pool trust. Generally speaking, we use the pool trust for people over 65 because there may be some better options for people who are under 65, whereas once you're over 65, your options are really very limited to the pool trust. So there's not an age limit. It just might not be the best option if you're under. Oh, I want to say one more thing. And you're only really using the pool trust at the time you're on these government benefits. So this is not like when I was here last time and I was talking about creating trust to protect assets and moving stuff around. This isn't something that you would do in advance of needing it. It would be something that you would sign up for and create at the moment that you're applying for those government benefits. Yes. is there a gate?
On the video.
Oh, we need to use the mic for
hear.
questions. Okay. I was going to do questions at the end, but this happens every time I talk about pooled trusts. Yeah. Yeah. How do you want me to do it? Yeah, I can repeat each question, yeah. And I've been trying to repeat it in my answer, but I will make sure I repeat the exact question. What was the question here? Oh, is there a gatekeeper for the funds in the trust that say yay or nay? That was your question. So the pool trust administrator is the company that with the underlying charity, and they run it. Now, gatekeeper, the real gatekeeper is CMS, the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, because they audit the trust. They audit the trust administrator. So there are set rules. But for example, like if you have something really big like a kitchen renovation, you need to do that. They might say, we'd like you to get 2 estimates because they want to make sure probably that you're not getting ripped off, but also that you're not, overpaying your friend to get money out of the trust. So, but for things like your utility bills, your phone bills, your rent, all those things, I have never seen them say, no, we won't pay that. And I've had people who have very high rent, but they have very high income, and the pool trust is paying for it. So yes, there's a gatekeeper in that there are rules that govern the trusts, but it's not overly imposing upon people. So the question was, is it like a guardianship where somebody judges? No, it is having a trustee of your trust. So it's someone who is holding just these specific funds, right? You still have your bank account and you still have the $1,752 every month that you're completely controlling on your own. It's for that monthly income over that amount that there is someone who's in charge of it, and you have to submit to them for payment.
Britt, someone at home? Someone on Zoom? Diane on Zoom?
So the question was, so you can tell them, yes, but they can only pay things that are within Medicare and Medicaid's rules for how things are to be paid. Yes. Yes, somebody on Zoom who'd like to ask a question, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Britt. Is the group that runs the trust, do you pay them, the group that runs the pooled trust?
Oh, very good question. Yes, you do pay them. They have varying levels of fees. They have administrative fees because obviously they have staff that they have to pay. I think the least expensive monthly fee that I know of for a pool trust is, I think, $30 per month. The highest that I know of, I think, is probably $200 per month. And that's if you have a large deposit going in, because the understanding is if you have a lot of money going into the trust, there's a lot of work for them to do because you're going to be submitting a lot of bills to be paid. But each trust has its own method of payment. So some of them have, a lot of them have an initiation fee. That's a few $100s, and then a monthly fee. Some of them are set up where they just have an annual fee. They all have different payment structures. Yes.
Okay, sorry.
Let me just let her ask the follow-up. Yeah, go ahead. Or go ahead.
Yeah. If one came to see you, could you or could any elder care lawyer suggest, given one's whole income and savings and all the rest of it, which kind of trust company you should go with?
Yes.
Trust company.
Sure. So part of the services that we provide when it's appropriate for us to handle a Medicaid application for a client, which I was going to say at the end, but I'll say it here. There are a lot of people who come to me who say, we want to do a Medicaid application. And I say, you really don't need to pay a lawyer to do your Medicaid application. This is something you can do on your own. We help them find social work services. I know we're near Penn South here. There's social workers there. And so not everyone needs an attorney to apply for Medicaid. Now, if you're someone who has a lot of assets and a lot of income and we're looking to shift things around and protect assets, then you might be in a situation where it makes sense to use a lawyer. So yes, we are able to recommend pool trusts that we work with, and also we help people figure out, based on the needs they have, what the best trust is. So for example, there are certain trusts that have debit-like cards attached to their trust. So for someone, I just met with someone last week actually, who does a lot of little purchases at the local deli, the bodega, the, $3 here, $4 there. For someone like that, where a lot of this income's going to the trust, that person would really benefit from having that card. Now, that being said, there might be someone who has a, $300 overage, and once you pay the utility bill and the phone bill and the cable bill, the money is all gone. They don't really need those little things, so they don't really need the card. So they might have a different need, and so we try to help people to the best of our knowledge about the different trusts we know about. We try to help them figure out the best trust for them. Where are we going? I told you you'd be next. So the question was that for the pool trust, I'm going to alter your question a little bit because it didn't quite follow. So the $31,175 that you just referenced is not income. That is the imbalance you can have in your bank account. That's assets. Once you're underneath that level and you determine that you want to apply for services for home care, generally it's for someone who has Medicare already. What they really need is this long-term home care services. When you decide that you want to apply to get those services, then you would make an application, and if your monthly income is over the $1,752 per month, then you have what Medicaid calls a spend down. Your income is higher than they let you have. Now, I'm going to go backwards a little, and I didn't say this before. You can do two things with your spend down. You can give it to Medicaid, or you could put it in the pool trust and use it to pay your bills. So I didn't tell you that first part because most people are going to choose to take their income and put it in the pool trust and spend it on their bills. Now, maybe someone has a $6 overage, right? Maybe they're just a tiny bit over that $1,752. Well, that person might say, okay, just send my $6 to Medicaid every month. This is silly. It wouldn't make sense. You couldn't really sign up for a pool trust. But once you have an overage amount that's anything more than that $30 fee, it would make sense to put your money into this trust and use it to pay these other bills that you have. Did that answer your question? I'm going to stop you without you giving an example, and I'll answer your question. The question was, what do you do if you have assets over $31,000, right? Okay. You should have come to the last seminar, but I'm going to do a quick one because this is really getting into trust. There's a lot of things we can do because remember I said that there's no look back, right? So if you're over $31,000 and we transfer your assets this month, you can apply next month. So for some people, they have a family member that you can give it to a family member, you can put it in a trust. Those are really your main options. Friend, I guess, is an option. It's going to depend on how much you're over and what what asset is over, right? If you're over because you've got $30,000 in your name, but you have that small cabin upstate that's worth $50,000, I might recommend something different than if you're over by $50,000 in the bank, right? So it's the same monetary value, but it might have a different solution. So we don't have time to go into that today. That's a whole other thing. But if you're over the 30,000, there's planning to be done. But everyone here has different set of friends, family, and assets. And so everyone's situation would be different. But there is planning to be done for people who are over that amount. And those tend to be the people that I'm helping apply for in my office, that I'm helping to apply for Medicaid, right? Because if you're eligible already, why would you need me, right? There are other services available, either free services or services less expensive than a lawyer, honestly, who can help with that. So we tend to really help people who have something they need to protect. So we need to create structure to be tax efficient, make sure their wishes are followed, et cetera, et cetera. The question was, if you're giving to a family member, is it with a gift provision? It depends. But sure, if you're giving it to someone, you're giving it. It's theirs now. If you give it to a person, you're giving it. That's why some cases we create trusts, which are different, but you're truly giving a gift. Yeah, yes. Yes. So the question is, what I'm talking about with the pooled trust is only if you are applying for long-term care Medicaid for home care services, and the answer is yes. I didn't even get to nursing home yet. We haven't gone there. Long-term care services for home care is how we protect excess income. Oh, okay. The question was repeat myself, but I'm bad at repeating myself because I never know what I said. I think I said pooled trust only applies, well, not only, but it applies in this circumstance. We're talking about those applying for long-term care, community Medicaid for care in the home. Is there one up here? Wait, we have a question up here. Is that Helen? Is that, oh, I see. Oh, it's written, okay. Is the pooled trust the same as a Medicaid asset protection irrevocable trust? No. The pooled trust, I'm talking about a pooled income trust for excess income. The Medicaid Asset Protection Irrevocable Trust is the type of trust that I was saying you would give money over the $31,000 to, and we're not getting into that today because we'd be here till the end of time. Are there other types of Medicaid trusts? Yes, the Medicaid trust is the other type. Yes. No. I think you're not understanding. The question was, if you have monthly income of $1,725, do you have to spend that first before you spend the pool trust income? No. So first of all, if all of your monthly income added up is $1,725, you don't even create a pool trust. You just get your income, you're under the Medicaid limit, and you do what you want with it. It's only if your monthly income is over the $1,752 that you put the excess in the pool trust, and I would recommend that you spend the pool trust money first, because that's the money you lose at death, and that you spend the money in your bank account last. The money in the pool trust stays with, the question was, the money with the pool trust stay with the pool trust. So it stays in the pool trust, because remember, it can't give you cash. So it stays in the pool trust as you use it. So let's say you put $1,000 in every month, and month 1, you spend the full 1,000. Great. Month 2, the 1,000 goes in, you spend 900. Month 3, you start with $100 in there and another 1,000 goes in. Now you have 1,100. If you die now, the 1,100 goes to the trust. Yes. Good question. The question was the $31,175 in your bank account, does it have to stay that way every month? It can go above that, but at the end of the month, the last day of the month, you have to be back under. So say my 1752, right, is going in there every month. Well, actually, my 3,000 is going in there every month, right? So the 3,000's there. That might bump me over. I might now have 33,000 in that account. The pool trust money comes out. And as long as I spend down, so at the end of the month, I'm back under 31,750, I'm still eligible in the following month. So when I say spend the pool trust money first, I should qualify that with spend the pool trust money first, except if you're getting towards the end of the month and you're at like 34,000, you got to spend that down a little. Or you could always put it in the trust too, because the trust doesn't count. Yes. If you had 3,000 in the trust, yeah, I'm excited that you're going to Europe. If you had 3,000 in the trust and you decided to go spend it all and go to Europe in 1 month, is that okay? Yes, you can spend it in its total amount every month. You can do, yep. You can spend it in full every month. Do we have other questions up here that I didn't answer? No, I don't see any in the chat, and no one seems to have their hand raised anymore. The pool trust conversation, I'll get you in 1 second. The pool trust conversation always creates this because it's such a, I think it's exciting, right? Because you can receive home care, you can stay in your home, and you get to keep the use of your income to pay all your other bills. So it's really freedom. And I'll tell you, we have that as New Yorkers, and many other states do not have this option. So don't leave. Yes. Haha. Someone always asks about money. So the question, well, thank you, the very nice words, but I won't repeat those. But the question was, if you want to come see me, what is my consultation fee? We charge a $500 consultation fee, and then we apply that towards any work we're retained to complete. So if we do any work, it gets looped in. If all you do is come for the consultation, that's what it is. And what we ask people to do when they come for a consultation, and I would say, whether it's me or any other lawyer you see, if you have a lawyer, go back to your lawyer. This advice is only worthwhile. So I didn't give my disclaimers at the beginning. This isn't legal advice. This is meant to be educational. But when you're actually paying for legal advice, if they don't know what your assets and your income are, you might as well just sit in a general seminar like this, right? So we ask people to fill out a questionnaire in advance that tells us what the assets are, what the income is. Because if I don't know that, I can't give you detailed advice. And what I like to do with a consultation is play it out for people. What will this look like in your situation based on what you have? Yes. How many days does Medicare cover in a nursing home? So I'm actually going to get back to the nursing home now. So Medicare covers those rehab days that we talked about up to 100, right? After the 100, Medicare doesn't cover anything, and that's where you either pay privately for the, I was talking about the facility in Brooklyn today that was $475 per day, or that's $475, or you could apply for Medicaid. Sorry, did you say? Oh, no, that's okay. Oh, someone mentioned Hopkins Center. Yeah. So the facility that somebody was just commenting on the block that the Hopkins Center's on in Brooklyn, but the facility that I was specifically talking about is called Phoenix. I don't know what part of Brooklyn it's in, actually, but that was $475 per day. So now let's say I went through these home care options. We're very excited. We want to stay home. We want to use our income. But take the person I talked to today, and they said, unfortunately, my parent can't go home. A lot of times I hear it's a 4th floor or 5th floor walk up. I hear the bathroom isn't accessible. I hear they like the socialization in the facility. I've had someone say to me they like the food at the facility. It's not for me, but some people, they do. So, if for some people, a facility setting, a nursing home setting, might be what they need or what they like. So what do we do then, right? We have now a look back. This is not as good for us financially as home care. So if you need this, we have a different set of rules. So it's still that $31,175 that you're allowed in the bank. You're still allowed those retirement accounts, but now your income goes to the facility. No pool trust in a nursing home. So if you need to stay on long-term at the nursing home and you're underneath the $31,000 and you make $3,000 a month between your different sources of income, you pay the $3,000 to the facility and Medicaid pays the balance. Yes, the question was, in order to get Medicaid, you need to have $31,000 in the bank. Yes, $31,175 or less for Medicaid services. So, no, Medicaid, the question was, does Medicaid reimburse the facility at the same rate? No, Medicaid has a cheaper rate. Medicaid pays less, but all you ever pay is your income. So if all you have is $650 of Social Security, that's your price. If you have a really big pension because you were retired FDNY and you have a $7,000 pension, and your $7,000 is going to the facility, and that's your price. So your price depends on your income, and then Medicaid pays the balance at their rate. Medicaid, the question was, can you find out the rates? Online on the Department of Health website, there's Medicaid rates. And to find out the private pay rates for the facility, you usually have to call the facility, and they probably wouldn't tell you unless you had a loved one who was there and they want to start collecting money from you. So, yes. What if you were supporting other people out of that income, a spouse or a child? If it's not a spouse, there's special rules for a spouse, which I'm going to go into. A child, unless it's a minor child, they don't care, basically. The question was, if the child is disabled, I don't believe that a disabled child can get any of your income. However, there are rules for, let me get into the transfer of assets. I'm going to go there in a second. So if you are living, let's say yes. Oh, I don't know that your mic is working. Oh, yes, we've provided refreshments and coffee in the rectory. Yeah, and it's getting cold, yeah. So I'm going to do nursing home. I'm going to stop questions right now. I'm going to finish the nursing home, and then we're going to have coffee. Okay, so if you are in a nursing home, and let's say, let me give an example to answer your question about a spouse, right? So let's say your spouse, the one spouse who's in the nursing home has $5,000 a month in income. And the spouse who's at home has $1,000 a month in income, right? You can't stay at home probably on $1,000 a month of income if you were used to living on $6,000 a month of income. the Medicaid rules say that the spouse at home keeps their own income plus enough of the institutionalized spouse's income to bring them up to $3,853.50 per month. That's why I have the cheat sheet. So they keep $1,000 of their own, $2,853.50 of the $5,000, and the balance of the $5,000 goes to the facility. So there are protections for spouses. Now, swap it, right? The spouse who's in the facility has $1,000, and the spouse who's at home has $5,000. The spouse who's at home only keeps their $5,000, and the facility gets the $1,000 because they're over the $3,853.50. So that's how Medicaid provides for spouses at home. And it's very different now, but when I first started practicing in this area of the law almost 15 years ago, it was pretty traditional, right? It was usually that there was a male and a female, and the male was older and went to the facility first and worked and had the income, and then the spouse was at home and sometimes made $600 a month in Social Security because they never worked outside of the home, and we really had a lot of the spousal shifting. Now I see actually a lot more balancing, which I think is exciting, but a lot more balancing of people's incomes, but there is an availability for that. Now, you're allowed to have $31,175 in assets, just like with home care, but the difference is that if you're a single person and you own your home, it's not protected anymore, because it's not your primary residence anymore because you're not living in it. Whereas if you have your spouse living at home and you're in the facility, it does have protections. And there's other certain family members that can live in it and get protections, but basically minor disabled children. But if you also have a child who was living with you for 2 years, not of the 5, 2 years prior to going into the facility, the home could be transferred to that child as what we call a caretaker child, and it doesn't have a penalty. But any other transfer of assets, so let's just make it easy. And let's say someone has $200,000 and they're only allowed to have 30, right? So they're $170,000 over, and we have a 5-year look back. So if we transfer the assets within 5 years before going to the facility, Medicaid assesses a penalty. The penalty is, in New York City, for every $14,273 that you give away, it's a 1-month penalty. So if I am $170,000 over and I give it away, and I divide that $170,000 by that number I just told you, the $14,000 number, that's how many months Medicaid won't pay for that facility. So we like to, if we are over, we like to do transfers. Oh, let me also say, if you have a spouse, there's no penalty. So if one spouse needs the nursing home, we can give the assets to the other spouse, and there's no penalty. Penalties are not assessed to spouses. But for a single person, if they're giving the money away, there's a penalty assessed. So 1, we like to plan ahead. And 2, if we don't plan ahead, and I'm not going to get into the details of this because it's very complicated, but if you didn't plan ahead the 5 years, go see a lawyer, because all is not lost. You do not have to spend every dollar down. We do specific type of planning called promissory note planning, where we can protect assets over that amount. But we're not going to go there today. But so the big takeaway there, because all you'd probably take away from it anyway, is all is not lost if you didn't plan 5 years in advance and now you need a nursing facility, and that's when you need an attorney to help you make sure you don't spend down more than you need to. I think that's plenty, because we've gone for over an hour and it's overwhelming. But thank you.